Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this video we're actually going to build our first game for our arcade project. So notice I have my arcade project open here. And what I want to do is I want to create a new page. I'm going to duplicate my index.html. Now notice there's really no way to duplicate it from here. So what I can do is I'm going to copy all of the stuff here. Copy. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this, let's call it number.html, because this is going to be our number guessing game. Okay, and then I'm going to paste that in here. Now, the reason why I chose to copy my entire website and paste it in is because I want to still use the same design elements from my main page. But what I want to do is get rid of all of the extra content here that's not header and footer. So I want to get rid of everything that's not header and footer. So the photo grid, okay, perfect. So I have header and footer here, and now I can start building my number guessing game in here. Let's go ahead and run just to see how that works or how that looks. Oh, I need to create a link to my number guessing game here because it's going to run my home page every time, which is going to be somewhat annoying, but that's okay. Let's go back to the index page here. And down here in first photo grid, I have number guessing game. Now I want this to be a link to the number guessing game. So up here, we already have a link, and that's number guessing game.png. I'm going to make this an anchor, and the href is going to equal number.html. Now I want to make sure I do the anchor end tag there. All right, let's run it now. And when I click, it should take me to number.html. Now I actually probably don't even want the, let's remove the footer down here as well too. So in my number guessing game, let's remove the footer. Okay, so now we should have a website that will just allow me to post my number guessing game right there, and we can actually build the project. Okay, so in here, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create an H1, call it number guessing game. Getting a phone call here. Let me, I'll call them back. Oh, I opened up my calculator on accident. Okay, we'll call this number guessing game. And we need to add a couple more HTML elements to this page. Let me open up. There we go. So first thing we need to do is we need to add a paragraph element. This paragraph element is going to basically give us some instructions and tell the user what to do. So, but we also need to tie this to an ID. We need to set an ID. So we're going to say ID equals output. This is going to be the output element on our page. And output will equal, or what we want in this paragraph element is I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Okay. You can put whatever language you want in there. For me, that just makes sense, but if you want something else, that's fine with me. All right, let me shrink this stuff, get this kind of stuff out of the way so we can have a little more room to write our code. Okay, so that's our output. Let's create an input, and this input is going to allow our user to type in their answer. So we'll call this input. And actually, it's going to be type equals text. And I want to create some placeholder text. And the placeholder text is going to be, let's say, enter your guess. Okay. All right, and then the last thing I want on my page is a button. I'm going to shrink this even more. Okay, the last thing I want on my page is a button. It's going to be button, and we'll just say guess. Okay, so let's run it. And so cool, we have I'm thinking of a number between 100 and 1, or 1 and 100, and guess. Now I can tell that for some reason, oh, because I'm inside the light blue class. All right, that's why. Let's do an end tag for that div there. Okay, now it looks good. Now it looks the way I want it to look. And you can add any kind of style you want to yours. I'm going to leave mine unstyled just because I don't want to spend too much time messing around. Actually, I am going to style just a bit, just a little bit. Man, he is being persistent. Let me pause this video real quick and I'll come back after my phone call. Okay, I'm back. So I do want to add some style here. I'm going to say style equals, or let's say, I'll do this as a class up here, actually. Oh no, that's within the body. Sorry. Up here. Dot number guessing game. We'll do that. Number guessing game. And I want to just add some padding. That's all I want to do. 20 pixels. Okay. And then I'll apply the number guessing game. Class equals NGG. Okay. I just wanted a little bit of padding to kind of push it off of the edge there. That looks good. Okay, so now we have our user interface set up. Essentially, we have our game looking like it's supposed to look. Now let's go ahead and start working on the programming. We want this to actually do something whenever we type in a guess and hit enter, right? So what do we actually want it to do? I'm going to get rid of that comment there. So what do we want it to actually do? Well, in order to do this, we need to create a script element, and then we can put all of our JavaScript in this script element. The first thing we want are some variables. So I'm going to create, let's see, variables. Oh, it's going to keep thinking I'm typing HTML until I do the end tag for script. So let's do that. Now I can start typing, right? Variables. Okay, now I can start typing some JavaScript. Okay. Okay, so I want some variables. The first variable I need is a mystery number. So mystery number. And that mystery number, let's set it to 50 at first. And this is just going to be the mystery number that my that my game is going to be based off of, right? The user is going to have to find the mystery number. So I'm just making sure that everything here is good. Oh, I see what's going on. I was wondering why my colors weren't popping up the right way. It's because I hadn't ended my div properly. Okay. So this mystery number is going to be the number between 1 and 100 that my game is thinking of. Later, we're going to change this to a random number. For now, I'm just going to keep it at 50 because 50 is an easy number for us to test. All right, then we need a variable for player guess. We'll set that equal to 0 at first. And we also want a variable for number of guesses. This is going to allow us to determine how many times our player has guessed and tell them how many guesses it took them to get to the right answer. All right, then here we need to initialize our input and output. I spelled variables wrong there because I was distracted. Variables, all right. So in here, we need to initialize our input and output so we can actually change the HTML on those input and output variable. So let's create a new variable. We'll call this input, and we'll set it equal to. Now, we used to use document.getElement or document getElement by ID. That works, but we're going to use something different. I just want to show you there are different ways to do things. We're going to use something called document.querySelector. Query selector does essentially the same thing. They're very different in terms of what's going on behind the scenes, but in terms of the actual effect that it's going to have on our game, it's essentially the same. I just want to show you there are different methods that we can use. And we're going to set it to input. So we're going to look for the input ID. Hold on, I got to let my dog in. Come on in. He's whining out there. I'm just going to leave the door open for him. Okay, so we're going to look for the input ID, which is right there. And we're going to do the same thing for output. Var output equals document.querySelector. And that'll be output. All right, now we want to set up our button. Okay, so the button is going to be essentially the same. We're going to create var button equals document.querySelector. But instead of associating it with a hashtag, we're just going to say button, because we only have one button on our page. Then we want to change the style.cursor. We'll set it to pointer. Now it's going to change the way our cursor looks. And then button.add event listener. Now this is also different than what we've used in the past. In the past we've used an on click. For this we're going to use add event listener because add event listeners are a little bit more robust, and we're going to use a separate add event listener later on. So I wanted you to just get familiar with using add event listener. And essentially the way this works is we want to look for the action. The action that we're going to execute is when we click on the button. And then we want to type the function that's going to run. We're going to create handler. We're going to create a function called click handler in just a second. Actually, let's do that right now. Let's create click handler. So function click handler. So what this is going to do is it's going to essentially just, whenever we click the button, we want to do something. And just to test out everything that I have here, I'm going to actually change the output equals inner.html or output.inner.html. That's what I want. Hold on one second. Yeah, output dot inner HTML equals you clicked the button. I just want to test this out to make sure our game is working up to this point. Okay, and it is. All right, so now I can click the button and then change this message on the screen, which is what I want. Okay, now what we want to do here is we actually want to change the amount. Well, first thing we want to do is when they click the button, we're going to assume that that means they're making a guess. So we want to increase the number of guesses. So we can say number of guesses plus plus. Then we want to get their input. We want to get whatever they've put into this input variable here, or this input element. We want to get that value, and we want to bring it into our, was that fart? I must have wrote fart at one point. So we want to bring in whatever they've typed, and we want to bring that into a variable in our game. And the variable we want to bring it into is the player guess variable. So we want to say player guess equals. Now, this is an input type of text, meaning if they type something in there, it's going to come in as text. We want it to actually be a number so that we can compare that number to the number that we have, our mystery number, and see which is higher, which is lower. So in order to turn this into a number we can recognize, we need to parse this input. So we're going to say parse int because we need to turn it into an integer. Parsing is just a fancy word for converting, right? So we're going to convert this into an integer, and we're going to say input.value. So we're going to player guess equals parse int input.value. That's going to turn whatever they type into a number. All right, now we need to start using those conditional statements that you read about earlier this week to learn how, or to figure out what actually happened. So we need to compare. So we'll say if player guess equals mystery number, then they've won the game. So we'll say output dot inner HTML, you won. And here we can say it only took you number of guesses. And what that's doing is it's just giving them some feedback saying, hey, you actually won the game, and it only took you like one guess or two guesses or whatever, right? So let's go ahead and test this out. I'm going to run that, go to my number guessing game, thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Let's try 50. Hey, it only took me one guess. Beautiful. Okay. Now it's going to take way more than that, obviously. So let's figure out what happens if they enter the wrong thing. So we're going to say else if, and let's say if player guess is greater than mystery number. So their guess is too high. So then we can say output dot inner HTML equals your guess is too high. Then the only thing we have left is if their guess is too low. Now, if they type something that they're not supposed to type, like a word, then that parse statement that we wrote is actually going to just turn that into a 0. So this is, this will be fine. We can just say else output dot inner HTML equals your guess is too low. Okay. So that's going to catch everything else. So basically anything they enter, we're either going to say you won, your guess is too high, or your guess is too low. Okay. And now the only thing we have to do is we want to reset the value of our input so that it doesn't stay there whenever we click the guess button, right? Because we want it to go away after our guess so that we can see that it's doing something. All right, let's run and let's play the game. All right, so I'm going to try 75 and hit guess. Oh, guess is too high. Let's try 25 and guess. Guess is too low. Let's try 50. Wow, I won, and it only took me 3 guesses. Well, this game is great, but it's not perfect. And the reason why is because, well, one, it's the same mystery number every time, and that sucks. And 2, I have to actually click the guess button. Well, that's gross. I'm used to being able to type something and hit enter, hit the enter key, right? So let's change both of those. Let's fix them both. The first one is actually easy to fix. Up here in mystery number equals 50, we don't want it to equal 50 every time, right? We actually want it to be a random number between 0 and 100. So we're going to do something here. We're going to say math dot floor, and inside of some parentheses we're going to say math dot random times 100. This is essentially going to create a random value between 0 and 1. It's going to create a random decimal between 0 and 1, and we're going to times that value by 100. So if it comes up with 0.2, then it's going to be 20. If it comes up with 0.85, then it'll be 85. Does that make sense? So we're going to create a random number between 0 and 100. So the random is now happening, but now we need to figure out how to get it so that when we hit enter, it actually recognizes our input and runs this click handler. So what we want to do is hitting enter. In here, we need to add an event listener to the window itself, and that event listener is going to be listening for something specific. So we'll say window dot add event listener, right? And the thing that it's looking for is a key down, all right? And we're going to need a function to handle this. So let's say key down handler that we're going to create in just a minute. And we'll say false. Okay, so this key down handler function is going to listen, or it's going to basically be run. It's going to run anytime there's a key that's pressed. And what we want it to do is we want it to only look for the enter key. All right, so let's say function key down handler, and we want to pass in an event. Okay, now inside this function, this is actually going to be pretty easy. We're just going to say if event dot key code equals 13. Now, I use 3 equal signs here because that stands for strong compare. And what that does is that compares exactly 13, not 13 of the same data type and 13 of the same value, which is what we're looking for. Now, key code 13 is the enter key on my keyboard. All right, so key code 13. When that happens, I want to pull my click handler. I want to call my click handler event so we can play the game like normal. All right, at this point, this game is ready to go. Let's go ahead and test it out. And I'm going to bring this over here. Number guessing game. So let's try 50 just to make sure that it's not the same number. And my I see what happened. Okay, my enter wasn't working, and I noticed it's because I forgot the L in the click handler method. So if you run into issues where something's not working the way it's supposed to, go back over your code and make sure the spelling is correct on everything. Unfortunately, Replit doesn't have a great debugger for JavaScript, and so it's going to be hard for us to find those errors specifically whenever we're writing code. Now, doing it like this, it's going to be difficult. If we created a JavaScript page to handle this game, and all this code was in the JavaScript page and we linked to it, then it would be easier. But for this game, it's pretty simple. So I decided not to do that for this page. All right, let's go ahead and run it. Now let's test it out. Let's try 50. Enter. It won. It actually picked 50 as the random. That is so insanely unlikely that that would happen. All right, so 50 was too high this time. Let's try 25. 25 is too high. Let's try 13. 13 is too high. Let's try 8. 8 is too low, so it's between 8 and 13. Let's try 10. 10's too low. 11? Hey, 11. And it only took me 6 guesses. Okay, perfect. That's easy. Game is done. All right, whenever your game is finished, go ahead and turn in your project. And, you can add some design to this if you want. I didn't add anything to my game. I think it looks pretty good like it is, but you can add some more design elements to it if you want. It's completely up to you. But when you're ready to turn this in, go ahead and turn it in, and we'll move on to the next week. We'll make the next game. Ooh, actually, one thing you probably want to do is create a link back to your homepage here at the bottom. That's something you probably should do. All right. Yeah, that's probably it. All right. I will see you in the next week. Peace.